So, hello and welcome to the first ever BTCC Roundup show 2022. And what a fantastic show we've got for you, having a chat about all things that went on at the first round of the 2022 season at Donington Park, joined by my guest, Matt Salisbury. He's also known as Stato. He goes around the paddock doing all the interviews with the drivers that go on the Pitch BTCC app, but also the guy who had a fantastic rookie debut at Donington. We've got George Gamble, who did a brilliant job in the Sicily Motorsport BMW. He's impressed me all season long, right from the first ever test we had early. When was that, George? Back February, March? Like that?
Yeah, March time, I think. Yeah. Donington Park. So
no, fantastic. I mean, really, I think you've stunned everybody in the paddock right from that first day, really, because everybody was going, well, if he can go so well and he's a rookie and he's at BMW, there's obviously something going on, because you hear that. You'll get used to that in British touring car paddock. The biggest thing people talk about is the number of the boosts, rear-wheel drive and front-wheel drive, and who's carrying what and how much weight they've got and how much Alan owes them in the back of the bus and stuff like that. So it all goes on in British touring cars. Don't worry, most of it's complete rubbish, but listen to it. It's quite good fun. But fantastic weekend. But let's have a roundup of that Donington weekend first of all, because the big thing for me was we obviously had lots of things, different drivers, different teams, different colour schemes, all that sort of thing. But the big thing, or two big things, but the biggest thing was the introduction of hybrid. Now, I haven't been the biggest man of introducing the hybrid because I was a team owner before and I could see it going to be costing a fortune. But I've got to say, proof of the pudding is in the eating. The racing was fantastic. And I actually really preferred the hybrid ballast, if you like, compared to the weight ballast, because you didn't see the quick drivers just disappearing down the field. And I really enjoyed that. I mean, what was your take on that, Matt?
I'd probably agree with you on that one, to be fair. I think the interesting thing was there were so many unknowns going into the weekend. We didn't know quite how the hybrid system was going to work. We knew it wouldn't be like DRS, where people could just overtake each other at will and drive off into the distance, but it added that extra element of strategy that we've not had before. I think if you look at to carry the ballast the best, which team had the strongest engineering team to kind of work around having to carry that weight, and that's why still come through the field. It's because the car had been engineered well, they'd got it set up to carry the weight, and away they went. When you get rid of that weight and everyone's running with the same amount on board and it comes down to that boost, it was more a case of which driver could utilise those extra 15 seconds that they had each lap to the best of their ability. And it was a challenge because you don't just use it to attack, you use it to defend. You have to be careful you don't press the button too early and lock yourself out. And of course, then when we get into the races, you have the challenge of making sure that if you only had a limited number of laps, you were using it at the right time. And Dan Lloyd was one who pointed out that when you haven't got a full 15 laps or 16 laps of hybrid power and you've got someone like Josh Cook right behind you, making sure you don't just press that button for 2 seconds coming out of the last corner and waste a full lap when you're planning on saving that lap for later on, made it really difficult. I enjoyed it. I'll be curious to see how it works when we get to some other circuits, because somewhere like Brands Hatch Indy, 15 seconds of hybrid, when are you actually going to use it around such a short lap? That's going to be interesting to see. But overall, I think it was a good start. We didn't see a lot of the technical problems that I think people were worried we might see. I think it's all positive, and the general view across the paddock seemed to be that while there were a few teething issues for some cars, I think overall most people were pretty pleased with it.
Yes, I would tend to agree with that. I mean, two things from that. There were a few teething problems in the background, but it's new technology. Alan Gow said at the media day, it's new technology. The British touring car paddock are pioneers of this around the world. So, there's going to be issues that will come up during the season. But actually, I thought it was a real positive, and, and it made the day a lot more entertaining. It was interesting to see that Ash Sutton, pressed the button too early, just coming out of the last chicane, and locked him out for 2 seconds. Otherwise, he'd have been on pole position on qualifying day. So that adds a whole new element to me. But how about you, George? Because obviously, as a brand new driver, the good thing for you is you've got no preconceived ideas. That's what you've been using. But how much testing have you done with the system before you went to Donington a couple of weeks ago?
Yeah, well, this is it. I mean, obviously, for me coming into the championship this year, it's kind of a positive for me really that I haven't had the experience of the ballast before and everything else, and obviously it's something new for me to learn, but the whole grid. So, you know, it definitely helps a little bit. You know, everyone's going into it sort of blind, but no, in terms of testing, it was a couple of the early test days. Me and Adam, we sort of, because of all the teams obviously wanting the kit at the same time and trying to get released, there was a couple of test days where we ran one car with it, one car without, which a lot of the teams did, which also kind of helped show the difference, you know, between running it and not, and how we could learn from it and try and, you know, better the car. But it was, my experience has been really good of it, to be fair. And like you say, there is some little tricks with the system. Like you say, if you're pressing it too early, it locks you out, and, you know, then you end up pressing it in a panic and it locks you out again. Or, you know, it's just all these little things that you have to learn with it. So I think a lot of people made big head ground with it at Donington, you know, trying to get their the strategies dialed in, and it was quite nice seeing everyone with the same amount for the first quali of the year and the first race, and probably arguably the best race. It was the most chaotic, but no, yeah, my experience has been really good so far, and I'm enjoying it. But there was obviously, I mean, I unfortunately had, after my amazing podium, I did have a slightly worse race 3 with a drive-through, but now that's brought an element of strategy in for me, because now I'm slightly lower down in the championship and all the guys in front of me have got less boost. And I think going into Brands, I've got 12 seconds per lap in qualifying. And then obviously it changes for the race with the lap countdown. But, you know, that's going to be an interesting strategy now for me. Can I now overturn the people in front of me in the championship because I've got that extra bit of boost? So yeah, it's all going off really, yeah, and it's something I'm enjoying being part of for sure.
Well, that's what I think you'll learn at the British. Sorry, Matt, go on.
One thing I thought was interesting from the strategy point of view is George talks there about going to the next round, having that less time in qualifying. Obviously, races 2 and 3, there were drivers at Donington who didn't have the full complement of laps for the hybrid. But if you were watching on TV, on ITV, we obviously got the graphics that showed you when the hybrid system was being deployed and told you how many laps drivers had left if they didn't have that full complement. You know, we had drivers getting to the end of the race who hadn't actually used all of the hybrid that they were entitled to. So it shows that while it's obviously impacting on the race, drivers weren't necessarily reliant on it right through either to attack or defend.
But the thing with that as well is they're probably hanging on for that, because if they got a last lap safety car or the penultimate lap safety car, they then still got, you know, they could be added laps onto the end of the race, and they could end up needing that hybrid to actually get to the end of the race. So it leaves them a little bit, you know, if you can afford to hang on and end the race with 2 or 3 laps extra, that's going to help you in a safety car situation, which I think is really, really important, really. But George, you touched on something there where you thought the setup maybe is different with a car that's got hybrid and hasn't got hybrid, because obviously your teammate Adam Morgan, he had a technical problem and he was running with it at least 2 of the races, I thought, without any hybrid, if not 3.
That's right, yeah.
And actually, how quick would he have been with the hybrid as well? I think so. You know, Adam did a great job being really consistent in the points. But I mean, are there any specific setup changes with the car that you make if you've got hybrid or you're not running hybrid?
No, I think the biggest difference, obviously, pre-season testing for me was I was quite keen not to drive the car without the weight, because obviously the added weight is almost like full ballast from last year. So I didn't kind of want to be sport with a lighter car and the feeling of that to then have to, you know, get used to driving the weight. So for me, even when we've not ran the test before we got the components, we were always running at full weight to try and get that setup balance. So even when I wasn't using the hybrid, we were just constantly working at setup, just trying to get the car to feel best as possible. But the nice thing is, obviously, over the race weekend, you lose the hybrid, but you don't lose the feeling of your car, because it's effectively just the button that you're pressing. So whereas obviously if you're adding ballast, the feel of the car just gets worse and worse, you know, with the weight. Whereas, you know, Adam obviously ran without the hybrid, which just, you know, shows you how good of a job he did as well at the weekend. But you know, you can still kind of get working at it and drive around it, I guess. I think you just touched on it there. Obviously, there was a few drivers that didn't even use the full amount of laps. I had a reduced amount from race 1, and I still didn't use all of it in race 2 because of that exact reason. I could see Gordon and Tom were on the verge of a fight, and I thought, if I've got full 15-second lap, you know, it might just be that whole straight to help me get by. But then once you're between the 2 cars, you're just kind of almost saving it. And I think as well, saving the battery life for the following race. You know, it'd be good to start with. There's no, if you drain your battery, there's not a lot of time to get it charged to full for the next one. So it's
how long does it take to charge it then? So if the battery goes down, how long does it have to be plugged in? Is it much the same as plugging in an electric car and
obviously,
basically?
Yeah, the power input, same as the road cars, is immense. So you know, and you're not allowed to regen on race day, obviously. So only on the
I didn't know that. Yeah.
So you know, it's also important that you don't start the race with a lower battery, because it might not be as responsive. But no, it's it's been interesting so far. I mean, I still think a lot of people are still learning and for example, like we've just said, Brands Indy, you're going to have a short run in the same gear up the hill from between turns 1 and 2. Same from 2 to 3. You might use it, down the back straight. But yeah, it's like you say, if somebody that's only got 6 or 7 seconds worth of boost, where are they going to use that to maximise it the most? It's going to be really, really interesting. Yeah, to be fair.
I think as well, when we look at the introduction of hybrid, everyone's been going on about how it replaces ballast and the impact that that's going to have. But I think potentially the bigger change this year isn't the fact that we've got hybrid and no ballast. It's the fact that we haven't got that option tyre, because I think it was a combination of having option tyres and ballast that really mixed things up last year. So it'll be interesting to see, I think, how that one plays out over the course of the season, because obviously that's an element of the racing that's now been removed as well.
Well, I think in some ways the two things with the hybrid, it's made the racing a little bit purer. It hasn't thrown so much of a curve ball into everything, which at the end of the day, British Touring Cars is known for coming to the end of the season. They've still got 27 people all with a chance of winning the British Touring Cars. I exaggerated there, it's not that many, but it's still a hard, but it's always the top guys who are there. It doesn't affect it never completely throws somebody out of the mix, but I think this is a little bit purer, so there is a chance we'll come to the last round and somebody will have won it by then. There we go. I actually don't mind that. It's it has to happen every now and again, otherwise it's not a special thing when you've got 5 guys going for it at the end of it. But then also the good thing is, I think everybody's talking about it, which isn't a bad thing, is it? British Touring Cars is seen to be at the forefront of moving forward and being sustainable and being greener, and actually that is what's happening. There's obviously always lots of arguments about electric cars and things like that, and I personally have got an electric car. There you are, and I was probably one of the people who was against electric cars, but actually I've driven one. I actually love it. I probably wouldn't have to get a car with a normal engine again, but that's down to individuals, isn't it? But the good thing is that the British Touring Car Championship is at the forefront of that and leading the conversation about green energy and things like that. So that's great. But so going back to Donington, lots of things. 3 different race winners. A fantastically close qualifying session. 4 guys all within less than just over half a tenth of a second. And any one of those 4 could have had pole, and they all had a story of how it could have been and things like that. But actually, I spoke to a few of them, and they were all, well, it's the same for everybody. Might have had a bit of traffic, didn't press the button too early, didn't quite get my lap hooks up. It's all the normal stuff. But I thought it was fantastic qualifying, which led into 3 great races, especially those first couple of laps, which you were really involved with, George, in the first race, when you had the 2 BMWs looked like they'd won it by the time they got to the first corner. But then they managed to start bumping into each other and pushing each other off the circuit, which was quite entertaining, I'm sure, for everybody else. But I was standing in Jake Hill's garage, so it wasn't quite so entertaining for me. But but it was great for you, because you went, wow, this is what it's all about.
I mean, to be fair, that was my first race. It's been my first race competitively, like that sort of level for a year or 2 since Porsche. So coming into that, I was a little bit thinking, I wasn't too sure to work out, how to take it. But because obviously we all watch the touring cars, and I've been on the support paddock for 10 or so years, so I know what the racing's about. But yeah, I mean, obviously we started 5th, which was an amazing qualifying, but I actually did get through to 4th just before the red flag, and did the red flag phase in 4th. And the red flag kind of scuffed me a little bit, because I wasn't ready to make that jump again. And something I've had to deal with as well is it's the first time on a grid where I've got cars around me that are all slightly different, So I wasn't quite ready to go like the front wheel drives are at the start. This is a big thing I've had to get my head around. The rear wheel drives do take a lap or 2 to get going, which I realised over the weekend, compared to the fronts, you got someone like Gordon Shedden behind you. He's not waiting around, if he's got the opportunity,
I think
he's
that's
going.
probably one of the scariest people to have sitting in your mirrors.
Yeah.
You can't. All you can see those angry Scottish eyes behind you. I just think it definitely gives you a hurry up, I think.
That's it, yeah. And he's definitely thinking, I'll get this young lad out of the way. But I don't know, it's good. It's good racing, and I must admit, the thing was for me of the weekend, which is like we touched on it. It's probably a bit new that it tended to be the same set of lads at the front, so it was really good, and it's nice racing the fastest ones, and just going at it really. But it was interesting. By race 1 out of the way, going into race 2, I felt much more relaxed, and I understood the procedures more and everything else. So it was. It's interesting racing. Like I say, it's just a 20-minute all-out sprint really. It's the first series I've done where you don't have to kind of manage the race a little bit in the middle maybe, so you're there for the end, or it's just flat out. So. Well,
I always say to any new driver coming into it, because I've run a few rookies coming into it, and we've run the team before. It's an hour-long race split into 3 20-minute sections because it's all linked together. So you've got to bide your time in the first one a little bit, and then keep your place if you can, and keep moving forward. Try and get in that reverse grid, depending on what's happening. Except for you, because you were right at the front anyway, so it's fine. But rookie, you're sort of hoping for a third. A 12th place in race 2 that gets you a reverse grid and suddenly you're up the front. But they're all linked together, which is actually what makes it quite exciting, really. I mean, that's good. I mean, obviously, the race 1 winner was Tom Ingram, if I remember rightly, unless I'm wrong. But I think it was Tom Ingram, who was, for me, the standout driver of the weekend. I mean, he always... There's something about Tom. He's such a feisty racer. But it's like an iron fist in a velvet glove with Tom. He just knows when every little move is quite thought about in a split second. And I think his driving style and sort of mental approach will really suit having the ballast, if you like, as hybrid now.
And I think he showed that in the first race, because when he had those two squabbling ahead of him for position, when he made the move for the lead, that was a split second chance to get ahead of them both. Had he not made that move then, would he have been able to get ahead of the BMWs later on? We'll never know. Yeah. But it's that opportunistic streak in a driver that we see from the likes of Tom and the likes of Ash Sutton. Just knowing that that's the chance, you've got to take it. And obviously that was the moment that ultimately got him that win.
Mm. No, exactly. And then moving on to race 2, obviously then we had Gordon winning. I can't remember too much because I was looking at Jake Hill coming through from the back of the field.
That was Tom, yeah. Tom second and then myself third, yeah. So
it's fantastic. I mean, a podium in only a second British touring car race. And Matt's got a bit of a stat about that, because I couldn't remember when the last time anybody got a podium in their first British touring car weekend. But quite a big name in motorsport. We can that factor.
It was one that came from the team over the course of the weekend, actually, because the team had raised it and they were like, well, is that right? Is that the right driver? So we double checked, we triple checked. We had the discussion in the press room at the weekend at Donington, trying to come up with names. But you've got to go right back to 2009 for the last time someone did that, and it was Johnny Adam, who of course has gone on to be hugely successful in GT racing. He only did a single year in British touring cars, so he's best known for what he's done elsewhere. But if you look at some of the drivers who are on the grid at the moment, there's only 3 of them that have actually managed to get a podium first time out, the other 2 being Jason Plato and Tom Chilton, and you're going way back for either of those. And you could possibly argue that the grid now is more competitive than it's ever been for George to do it in that first race meeting. You look at some of the others, I mean, I know at the weekend Adam Morgan was a bit like, everyone wants to talk to George because he's been quicker than me and everyone's ignoring me. But, you look at Adam, it took Adam 40 races before he got onto the podium. We've got the championship contender like Tom Ingram. Tom Ingram did over 50 races before he got onto the podium. So to be up there in race number 2 and in that first meeting, it's obviously something that bodes well for the future, but I guess it ramps the pressure up now to make sure that when we get to Brands Hatch and we go to Thruxton and Alton Park and Croft, that those kind of results are repeated. I guess if you start off with a bad weekend at Donington Park as a rookie, the only way is up. When you start it on the podium, you've got to make sure you're
It's a long way down,
that level going forwards.
Yeah, but
yeah, you always have, I mean, I loved, so Adam, when you got your podium, I saw Adam coming up, and then Russell was up there, and I think Adam's son was up there as well. That's what I've been racing against the Sicily team and Russell and Adam for a while. They're genuine racers. They love going racing. They love their motorsport. Lovely people. I think you're going to fit in there, which I think you have already. But I think you're going to fit in there great. And they just want to do well, and they want everybody in the team to do as well as they can. So I was super pleased with them when, especially, and for you as well, when you got that podium.
Yeah. No, the thing is with Sicily, they work so hard at it, and I was really impressed from the word go when we met touring their factory and seeing what they're doing there. They really want to go for it, and it's really nice to have the opportunity from them to join this team this year, and we really feel like we've got a strong car, and Adam as my teammate has been like hugely important. He's been really helpful, and I think also Adam's taken a lot from it. In testing we've been to and fro between each other for times, and the data that we're getting, we can bring each other on, and we're just all working as a team, and it's a really nice atmosphere to be in, and to reward it with good results it's no better feeling really. So but no, like you say, with Russell, Adam and our engineers, and they've worked tirelessly for this. So yeah, it's a nice feeling. But yeah, definitely there is a little bit of pressure now going into Brands, so I've got to factor that in a bit.
Yeah, having two strong cars for the team as well, I don't think that can be underestimated, because a lot of fans, if you read what they've said on forums over the off-season, they've said, well, that second car at Sicily, who wants to take that car? Because we've never seen it performing kind of at the level that Adam does. But then when you look at the drivers who've been in the car in the past, when Tom Oliphant came in, he was coming in as a rookie. When Jack Buttel came in, he was coming in as a rookie. Dan Rowbottom came in as a rookie. There's only really Tom Chilton last year who was an experienced driver in the second car, and for whatever reason, him and the BMW didn't well last year. He just didn't get on with it. So they've never really had a driver in that second car who's been able to help push Adam on and maybe help with development during the season. And I think the fact that George has obviously hit the ground running, the car suits him, he suits the car, that can only help the team get stronger as the year goes on as well.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, this was one of the biggest things. I think as well, myself driving in the BMW, I've got no front-wheel drive experience at all. So coming into it, especially coming from Porsches, where maybe they are a little bit faster, but they're really nervous front on a Porsche, with no weight across the front axles. So jumping into the BM, immediately I was like, I just love this car. I can really get stuck in under the braking, which is something that the front-wheel drive. If you've got front-wheel drive experience and you come into a rear-wheel drive, it can take a little bit of time to get your head around having to brake that a little bit earlier. You haven't got the front diff. It is a different way of driving. So obviously Adam has got a lot of experience in both, and he can get his head around it. But no, I think definitely it's good to bring my experience to the team and it be recognised. And some of the inputs we've had have been forward progress. So yeah, I think for sure as the rounds progress, and we just dialing it in all the time. Maybe working on a little bit more of a race setup, because that was the first weekend really. We've had 3 races, and seeing what we do from there. It'd be interesting to see how that progresses into Brands. I think we are making progress all the time, so it feels like it anyway. So for that starting point, Donington, which, believe it or not, being my local track has never predominantly been that lucky for me. So I don't know if I've just burnt it all out there, but no.
Well, the good thing is you don't go there again, so it's fine.
Yeah,
so
that's true. Yeah.
Until next year, so it's fine.
Yeah.
So your connection with the city, so it's always interesting how people get together and start talking about working together. So your connection with the Sicily team, I don't know, but is it something to do with the Ginetta connection? Because you've got a history of Ginettas, and the Morgans have got a history with Ginettas as well. Was that a factor in deciding to run with them?
That's it, yeah. So basically, like a lot of drivers, started off in Ginetta Juniors, and then instantly you're obviously looking at the touring cars and where you want to go. But when you look at who's come through Ginetta Juniors, it's crazy, but that is a good starting point. And in the Toka paddock especially. But yeah, obviously Ash Gallagher now is the team coordinator at Sicily. So, and he worked at Ginetta for years, running the championships within the touring car paddock. So yeah, that was a connection. And I've known Ash and Russell and Adam for a while, and we got chatting, and they were saying, obviously, with the experience, I know all the tracks, know how the format works. I've obviously watched touring cars for years and raced just under it. So, it was just kind of got talking really. And, with the help of some of my sponsors, my personal sponsors, Hooch, and Steve Perez and some other family friends who decided to come on board, obviously with the big touring car, name. It's a great thing to be involved in. Barnes and West, just everyone really. Some new people that have joined on, Talk Suits, who helped me and Adam do all our race kit. But then, teamed up with the likes of Car Gods, Mac Tools, obviously Sicily themselves. It's great to be a part of such a big thing. It is a little bit new for me at the minute. I'm even being sat here now. You guys, this is all new. So, but yeah, no.
You seem to get it. Maybe NASCAR's the next step when you're reading off your sponsors and they're coming off there as well. But just going back to the Ginetta thing, we were spoke about before we went on air. I think Ginetta, they're unbelievable. They are the foundation of UK motorsport. All the way from drivers getting to Formula One, all the way down the level. A lot of them, especially UK drivers, have had a connection with Ginetta. A little bit like how the old Formula Ford 1600 used to be years and years ago. Everybody's had a drive in a Van Diemen at some point or other. Now it's like everybody's had a drive in a Ginetta at some point. And that's and I love the spirit of Ginetta. They're pure racers. Yes, it's a business and things like that, and it's all got to work, and it's got to work as a business. But I think that the racing spirit is really strong there.
Definitely. I mean, I think I was on maybe the transition where the previous format used to be you stayed in your go-kart till you were 16, you raced that, and then if you're able to, you went into single seaters. And then from there, you maybe tried the single-seater route, and then a lot of people then tended to go to GTs or Pro-Am driving where they could make it work a bit more financially. But when Ginetta made it available that you could race a car from 14, and and obviously it's also on live TV, you've got a lot more marketing opportunities as a driver in Ginetta Juniors than a go-kart with a small side piece on. So it is a different route really. But if you look at in the last 10 years, the people that started in Ginetta Juniors and where they are now, they could have even gone back into single seaters. It's a great way of learning the tracks for 2 years in the UK before maybe you do Formula 4 or something like that. So yeah, it is interesting. But yeah, like I say, when you look at who's come through, I mean, even Lando Norris and people like that, they all started there now. So.
Yeah, no, it's great. So go back to touring cars. Sorry, Nat, go on.
Sorry, just something George touched on then. He was saying about, the different experience of having to do things like this. I guess something a lot of people will look at as a young driver coming through is what happens on the track. But is what happens off the track perhaps the biggest challenge for a rookie coming up to this stage? Because when you're competing in the Ginettas, the Carrera Cup, F4, Mini Challenge, you're on the paddock, you're racing in front of the big crowds, but you do what you've got to do on track. You go back to your awning, you have a debrief, you're prepared for the next race. You don't get that in touring cars. You get out the car and you've got ITV want to speak to you, or the Talk Radio guys want to speak to you, or Us Press guys want to speak to you. And then, you're dragged off to hospitality because you've got to do a Q&A for your sponsors. You've got to cram that all into a race day when you've got 3 races alongside all your debriefs and everything. Is the off-track stuff maybe more difficult than the on-track stuff when it comes to taking that step up to this level?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it was new for me. Exactly the same, like you say, you still got to do the same job on track, but there is a lot of off-track stuff as well. But I must say, I really enjoyed it. Like I wasn't sure what to expect, but when pit lanes walk about, you meet fans, and it was really nice, because I did up to the point of maybe the pit lane walkabout, I'd had a good qualifying and a good race one. And people were really supportive, and I don't know if it was just because my local track, but it was great talking to so many people, so many fans, and the engagement with the touring car championship. I don't think there's a sport you can do that. Well, certainly not in the UK or Europe. You know, you can't go to a football match and do that with the players. So I think it's really, really good, and I really enjoyed it. But like I say, I think it's a time management thing, and just juggling, you know, getting your bits done with the car, but then putting the time in as well, with the fans and with the media. So, but yeah, no, I think I handled it okay at Donington. So I kind of know what to expect now, probably for brands. Whereas I was a bit nervous at Donington just because I was going into the unknown, but which was probably then amplified by getting a podium. So it definitely went up a level after that. But no, yeah, it was a really good first weekend, and really enjoyed it, all that side of it, to be fair.
Well, it's been great this year. We've had the media day, which I couldn't believe how many people were there at Thruxton on the media day. It shocked me, really. So, which is great to see. And then at Donington as well on Saturday. I haven't seen a crowd that big on a Saturday before up there. I'm sure I haven't. But the great thing with touring cars is the accessibility. You know, British Touring Cars is all about fan engagement. You know, even to the point of switching the garages around the other way, so they're pointing at the back, you know, for all the fans to see the cars being worked on. You know, as a team boss, when that was first suggested, as with lots of things, I usually a bit negative because I'm quite old and I don't like change. But because you go, oh, that's a bit of a pain and all that. But actually, it's brilliant. It gets the fans engaged, and I know TOCA have got that in circuits where you can have the garages around the other way. They will be doing that this year. But again, it just keeps the fans engaged with what's going on. If you don't engage with them, you're going to lose fans. That's what it's like. So, it's important. Another just important, going back to, it's getting your eating in and your downtime to let your brain switch off for 15 minutes or something. That's another important thing. The amount of drivers who forget to eat. I say to them, have you had something to eat? No, I haven't. Go over there for half an hour and have something to eat, like a bowl of pasta or something like that. It's really, really important, because you get to race 3 and you're just drained.
That happens.
It's a hard day.
Yeah. After I hadn't eaten all morning, like banana or something because I was a bit nervous. And then after race 2, I hadn't had lunch, and then it was genuinely like a whirlwind, or a podium and a Q&A, and I was kind of almost getting a little bit like shaky, and then it just dawned on me, I haven't had any food, water, so I had to kind of regroup a bit for race 3. But no, it's tricky. It's just the day just goes by so fast. There's so much going off. So. But the reverse garage thing was quite interesting for me. Yeah, I've never like I say, is that a new thing for this season? I think
they did it. Was it last year, Matt, at Silverstone, or the year before?
Yeah, we did it last year as well.
Last year, because the year before was, they didn't have fans, unfortunately. But last year, which is great. I think again, COVID's been a terrible thing for lots of people and things like that. But what it has done is maybe make everybody think outside the box of interacting as much as they can with the people once the crowd started coming back, which is it's a great thing. So going back to Donington, we've got race 3. That was a little bit of a switch around, as is normal with race 3. We had Jake Hill won it, but he had Ash Sutton getting the podium in second, and then Josh Cook coming back through from third, I believe, who had a terrible Saturday. I did feel for the guy. He talked about as being somebody who could be right at the front. Had very few laps in any of the practice sessions, and very few laps in qualifying. I think, Matt, you'll know better than me. But so a great result for them in BTC Racing. Who I also a shout out to BTC Racing. I couldn't believe the hospitality unit I saw in the paddock. It was
it was behind our garage. It
was like Formula One spec. So it's quite give me an invite next time. I'll come down, have a prawn sandwich with you, rattle my jewellery. But but that's great. And again, it mixed it up. But what happened to you in that third race?
Yeah. So basically, I took the car from out of first into neutral while everyone gridded up, and then when the 5-second board came out, pulled the first gear. And wasn't confident it engaged properly, so just released the clutch a bit just to get that bite, and that after the 5-second board is a no-no. But it's a new previously in championships you could do that as long as you didn't overstep your box, but the ruling's changed now. After the 5-second board, that's a no-go. So it was really unfortunate, because we were having obviously a good day, and it puts a little damper on the day. But it was still a learning process. Obviously, these are little rules that you need to almost see someone get or it happens to you. No, and obviously race 3 for me was just purely going to be about, you know, damage limitation with the reverse grid. I think, I don't know, but I would say going into this year, you either have typically a good, well, like we saw with Jake, you either have a good first 2 races, where then race 3 you put towards back in the mid pack because of the reverse grid, and it's just about getting those points there. So, you know, if I could afford a P10 there or a P9 without the penalty, you know, I'd be sitting in the top 5 or 6 of the championship now. So it is just about getting points wherever you can. So.
Well, the good thing is you've got another 27 races to go, so you know all is not lost. You've got lots to go, and you'll learn more and more. You're going to get quicker. Some of the other guys probably might have peaked already as they've been in the car for a couple of 3 years, but I definitely can see you're going to get quicker and quicker as the year goes on.
Yeah, definitely.
You're going to have some downtime. That's part of the job. If you have that many races, you're going to have a few bad weekends. But I think you've got all the makings of moving it forward. But the championship itself looks really close. I mean, I could probably pick 10, 12 people, I think, who could be in it to win it this year. But, the standout drive for me overall was Tom Ingram, who I thought had a fantastic weekend.
Yeah.
Have you got any stats about Tom Ingram's performance of the weekend, Matt?
I have, yes. So that was his 20th career win. So he's already well up there in the top 20 in the overall win. He's now 17th on the all-time list after that one. And it was actually a landmark weekend for him because he hit 2,000 career points in the British Touring Car Championship at Donington Park. And there's not that many drivers who've gone above that mark in the past. He led 2 races. So actually the 27 laps that he led at Donington Park is as many as he led all of last season. And we know how well 2021 turned out to be for him in the Hyundai. And obviously Hyundai is still a relatively new manufacturer to the championship, haven't won at Donington Park before. They're now the 20th different manufacturer who've won at that circuit as well. So there's a few little stats on Tom from the weekend that he'll be looking to build on when we get to Brands.
Now, an interesting thing with the Hyundai as well is the new car, but also a brand new engine for them this year. Now, that's a brave move for me, but it's the ideal time to do it because one of the other technical changes as well along with the hybrid was the change in the Toka engine, as it's called, which is now M Sport rather than Swindon, which, at the end of the day is a big change for the teams who are running that engine. But I think that Accelerate, who are running the Hyundai, doing a great job, Justina Williams doing a brilliant job up there. If you're going to do your own engine, now's the time to do it because they've had to swap engines anyway. And so Swindon have gone from being the Toka engine, so all the information they can't unlearn from running the Toka engine, they've applied to the Hyundai engine. I didn't notice anything, Matt, did you? But it looked fault-free to me, which is actually pretty impressive for a brand new engine.
No, I mean, for a new engine program, they've I wouldn't say they've had it easy because, taking on a challenge like that's never going to be a simple thing, but they've been able to go away in testing and just get on with the job. So it's meant that when they then got to Donington, it was a case of fine-tuning the car, getting it working to the conditions and just going out there and doing the job on track. But I think the engine thing across the grid shouldn't be underestimated because when you take into account those 4 cars and then all the cars that are running the M Sport unit, over half of the field at Donington Park had brand new engines in them. So, we've said a lot about we've had a few teething problems with hybrid, but no major issues. I think the fact that we haven't had, cars breaking down left, right and centre with engine problems is also a positive because, it's a big challenge for the teams to introduce them, but it's also a big challenge for M Sport because it's a brand new programme for them as well. So thumbs up to Cosworth for the hybrid side of things and thumbs up to M Sport for the engine side of things, even though we know that there is still a bit of work to do on that side when it comes to straight line speed, as we heard from, BTC Racing in particular after it. So work still to do, but a good starting point.
Yeah, good. Well, sorry about that noise in the background because I'm at AMD today and we just had a car on the rolling road dynoing and getting more power out. Not a touring car, just a normal road car. But hopefully you didn't hear that too much. But yeah, I mean, it's brilliant. I mean, for you, Joy, I mean, you've come for every series that you've been in before, if I'm thinking correctly when I'm thinking about it. They've all had the same engine, and the same chassis. So it's a new thing to have different chassis and different engines in the mix, and how that works, and also sort of completely different drive chains from front wheel drive to rear wheel drive. But it's how an engine delivers as well as anything else. So was that a big thing for you this weekend?
Yeah, definitely. I'm used to racing in effectively one make cups where, you know, they're all identical and it's just purely down to yourself. So normally, typically, I don't know, but every support series I've raced on the touring car paddock, I've had wins in. So coming into touring cars, it to me, it is obviously learning about that. So, like for example, at Donington, typically the last corner, the front wheel drives seem to, you know, be able to get it through there a little bit quicker, and then you go into a heavy braking zone for turn one. So it was a couple of times that Gordon caught me out, obviously in race 2. You know, it's about like just management. Obviously, you've got to try and pull away from them on one area of the track, so because you know they're going to be that bit quicker on the other. So it's going to be interesting going into Brands because it's obviously a lot smaller. And looking at the results last year, it looked more like a front wheel drive qualifying than maybe what was a bit mixed at Donington. So I suppose you've just got a shorter lap to recover it. You know, if the fronts are better at first 2 turns, there's only 2 left for the rears, so it's a tricky one. But yeah, that's the biggest thing for me. Just remembering, obviously, we're not all in the same car, you know, and why is he catching me there or there? But there's, like I say, there's so many different variables now, and that's probably why there's such a buzz around the championship. You know, is he using the hybrid on this straight or that one? And there's loads going on really, and obviously with the different engines and the different cars, yeah, there is a lot of variables. So,
so yeah, one of the variables we didn't have at Donington was the weather. That all seemed pretty. It was quite cold on Saturday. It warmed up a little bit on Sunday. Which I think I got a tan. I think actually. Luckily, I didn't get my legs out. Matt didn't get my legs out this time, so it's fine. No shorts. So it's all right. So I wonder I don't know what the weather's going to be like at Brands Hatch, but that can be tricky. And with rear-wheel drive, sometimes that gives the front-wheel drives a little bit of an advantage when it's a little bit slippery, especially if it's greasy, if you like, because once a car slides with front-wheel drive, you can use the throttle to control it, and also you're more likely to get a tap in a rear-wheel drive and not recover it. So that's something to add to your learning experience if it gets a bit slippery. But moving forward to Brands Hatch, Matt, have you got any stats moving to Brands that might apply to give George a bit of information of what he can do and keep improving on his fantastic first weekend?
Well, there's one thing that stands out, and it is that there is a little historic thing up for grabs when we get to Brands Hatch, because the pole position that Jake Hill scored at Donington Park was the 99th for an NGTC car in the championship. So whoever goes out at Brands Hatch and sticks the car on pole will be getting the 100th pole position since those cars were introduced. So I don't think there's going to be any trophy or anything on offer for it, but it would be a nice little thing, I suppose, for any driver to put next to their name in the record books.
Yeah, so that must be the qualifying 100. So it's like the first pole position of the weekend. Yeah. So, right. So obviously it sounded like that, but I just had to check because my maths isn't great. But well, that's something to aim for. I mean, and Brands Hatch is just so busy. I think the biggest thing that you're going to notice, years and years ago when I did touring cars for a little bit, is just how many gear changes there are. You're just like constantly changing gear all the time. And I think that actually when you're trying to think about using the hybrid and where to use it, where you're going to defend, and you're changing gears, it's just such a busy little, feisty little circuit, Brands, which I love. To add the hybrid into the mix of that, I think is really going to, get your brain working as well as your driving skills.
Definitely, it's so busy in anything as well. It's like it's almost like a go-kart track, and it is a big like fishbowl, and it's great for spectating. And anyone can see 2 or 3 corners of the track. So, we all know typically it's really busy as well. To be fair, spectator-wise. So, no, I'm looking forward to it. It's like I say. Unfortunately, I did have that trickier race 3, but now I'm a little bit further back in the championship, so I've got that bit more boost than in front. So it's going to be interesting. I mean, a couple of cars that's got 2 or 3 seconds of boost. Is that going to make much of a difference? I'm not sure. It might be more these 10-second pulls that it does it. So. Yeah, and I think typically Brands qualifying is got to be closer than Donington, so it's going to be chaos really in qualifying, and also the traffic management thing. The track's almost half the length, well, probably less than half the length of Donington. Trying to get a clear lap is also going to be quite tricky, I think, as well at Brands. So, but yeah, it'd be interesting to see how it turns out.
But I guess you've got experience of having to deal with relatively large grids on a short circuit, because I mean you obviously raced in Gianetti GT5s and won the championship, and that's a series that's got big grids. You know, when you were racing in Carrera Cup, all right, the grid might not have been quite as big, but they're not the smallest of cars.
No,
when you gaggle of them going around a circuit like Brands Hatch India as well. So I guess you have got a bit of experience in traffic management that'll help you next weekend.
Yeah, definitely. And the like I say, the difficult thing with Porsche is the closing speeds. Like if someone, you know, if you're catching someone, you're doing like 150, 60 mile an hour at the end of the straight there. So it comes up really quick. And with the pit exit at Brands, that could throw up some issues as well. I think, to be fair, at Donington, it was amazing how the drivers, you know, how respectable they were at the end of the pits, because it does pour onto the racing line. So you could just be starting a lap and you can see someone coming out of the pits and you think, oh no, and turn one's gone, and then that's the whole lap gone. So it is going to be a little bit tricky at Brands. It'd be interesting to see how the weather plays out, because of the wear on the track, you know, and how old the surface is. It is properly slippy in the wet there. So, and that's a new thing for me again as well. I've still not driven the car in the wet, unfortunately. So that is another thing that I might have to factor in. So hopefully, if it does rain, we get a chance in practice. But yeah, it's going to be a bit tricky.
That's an interesting.
There's a little bit of resurfacing work going on. Yeah, there's a little bit of a paddock, I think, and also on the Grand Prix circuit, but we're obviously not on the Grand Prix circuit this week. But going into paddock, I think, has been resurfaced when I was watching the GTs last weekend. But it's which will be interesting to see if there's any real difference. I mean, the good thing is, as Matt mentioned earlier on, when we haven't got the option tyre now, so that actually makes things a little bit simpler on setup wise. You're not having to overthink everything. But I do think that it's probably the best race for Tom. Well, let's see if it is the best race for the championship leader to go in with no boost, if you like, for want of a better hybrid. Let's call it hybrid, because boost is a terrible word to use in the paddock. Everybody's always going about boost, but the hybrid, because even though he's not going to have much to lose, if you like, because the straights you don't have to lose much around Brands, because the grid is usually less than a second covered front to back. You know, it's that close. So if you don't have that extra 30, 40 horsepower for, I don't know, 5, 6 seconds of 8 seconds of the lap, you know, and some maybe even if you can't use all the boost on the lap because the length of the lap, I reckon you're going to be down if you were going to be on pole, you're going to be 10th to 15th. I think that will be the difference. It's
your Ash Sutton situation at Donington Park, isn't it? And what Ash said about qualifying, that not having the boost for that little run to the line cost him pole position. You know, that not having that little bit of boost could be what costs Tom when we get to Brands.
Yeah, I think so. I know that's, to be honest with you, for me, that makes it much purer, because the driver is having to use that. You know, it's not as if it's just having to lug a huge amount of kilos around with you to try and do. You've actually, you know, you've got to either press the button at the right point and the wrong point, and as long as there's driver input, it's great. It's a little bit, you know, it's like DRS in Formula One. It's not quite right. It does the job, but it's not quite right. But if you could make it so the driver's controlling it, and then it's driver skill. We all want to see driver skill, don't we? And teams' engineering abilities. That's it for me, rather than just crash bang wallop. If you want to go and see lots of, you know, crash bang wallop racing, you can go down to your local oval and you'll see lots of great racing. Don't get me wrong, I love oval racing and I love it when I go and do it. But it's a different sort of thing, isn't it? And you know, and I think Alan Gow and Toka, you know, and I have to say it, be honest, you know, I think the hybrid thing has got a real potential to reignite British touring cars, and I think you've come into it, George, at a fantastic time. You know, so, let's hope your season continues. But I think we'll probably call it quits there, guys, because people will probably get bored, and some people have, you know, their retinas are burning out from this disaster of a shirt that I'm wearing. I know, Matt, that you're always quite understated when you come on the programme, so I thought I'd try and brighten it up a little bit.
You made up for both of us there.
No, but I'd just like to thanks very much for coming on, George. I loved you being in British touring cars right from your first test day, whenever that was, back at the official, I think, at Donington, and everybody was going, but he's going well, isn't he? He's going, what's happening to him? And then he went to Craft, and you're going well. So it's great to see. Matt, thanks very much. I hope, I'll tell all the fans, make sure you go and have a chat with Matt. He'd love to interview in the paddock all the time, and he'll sign all your autographs. If you want to hold him and have selfies, he loves all that stuff.
I already get that.
He doesn't. So that's I know he doesn't, so I love it. So that's great. So thanks very much for watching the first ever BTCC Roundup show. I hope you liked it. Like, subscribe, and do all the other stuff that you normally do on the internet. I'm a little bit behind the internet, but that's fine. Make sure you download the BTCC app. It's brand new. Yes, you'll have a few improvements coming over the year, but if you can support it, send your positivity through, and we'll be trying to give you as much information as possible over the season. Thanks very much, guys. See you at Brands Hatch.